Reporting live from Mason High School, I'm Alex Acuna with Big Wig News. Today we're here reporting on the Spanish-American War. There were many events that led up to the Spanish-American War. The first was the struggle for peace that was occurring in Cuba. Many Americans saw the revolution and were reminded of when America fought against the British. This brought up many sympathetic feelings for Cuba and the people who lived there. Another reason was that there were many investors who put money into Cuba and didn't want to lose the money. They lobbied to have America free Cuba from Spanish rule. American newspapers often exaggerated what the Spanish were actually doing. With newspapers and magazines as the only real form of mass media, Americans had no choice but to believe what they said. A letter from the Spanish ambassador to Washington called our president weak, which brought up negative feelings towards the Spanish. The last reason was the sinking of the USS Maine in the harbor of Havana. The public immediately blamed Spain and wanted to go to war with them. Americans during this time saw the Cubans struggle and sympathized with their fight for freedom. The public compared the adversities they faced with what America faced before we declared independence from Great Britain. Yellow journalism had a huge impact on what the public thought. They would publish outrageously exaggerated stories to compete for readers, and the public believed everything that was published. This caused the public to want to fight the Spaniards. In addition, we were pretty sure we would win. The final act that pushed us toward was the sinking of the USS Maine. Though the evidence that it was actually the Spanish was sketchy, we still wanted a revenge for the death of the U.S. servicemen and women. Senator Redfield Proctor from Vermont delivered a moving speech that eventually led Congress to declare war.
The Spanish-American War being set in motion by events in Cuba, the first battles happened all the way in the Philippines. The Philippines was the last major Spanish colony, and it would be vital to keep as a spot they could have influence in other than Spain. America recognized this and prepared its troops nearby as a rebellion in the colonies began to grow. Just days after war was declared, the United States Navy surprise attacked the Spanish fleet and completely destroyed it. Over the course of the next few months, United States reinforcements combined with Filipino rebels completely took over the island. Towards the end of the fighting in the Philippines, battles in Cuba began to pick up. The U.S. set up a blockade along the north of Cuba, but Spain slipped a squadron in along the east side. General William Shafter led U.S. forces to Santiago to prepare to battle this regiment. The forces included mostly volunteers called the Rough Riders that were led by Theodore Roosevelt. Most of these men were African Americans, college athletes, and Western cowboys. To take Santiago, both the battles for Kettle Hill and San Juan Hill had to succeed at the same time. Roosevelt and his Rough Riders took Kettle Hill and other forces took San Juan. After the fall of Santiago, the rest of the war went quickly, only about 4 months. Spain accepted a peace treaty and the U.S. won despite many deaths from improper clothing and trial.
The Treaty of Paris was signed by the United States and Spain and granted independence to Cuba. Then the United States gained control of Puerto Rico and the island of Guam. Also, the United States could have the Philippines for $20 million. For the treaty to take place, it had to have a 2/3 vote. Many people were worried about imperialism. The leading opponents were the members of the Anti-Imperialist League. It was formed during the war to oppose the establishment of U.S. colonies. Supporters of the treaty said the United States needed to compete equally with other great nations. In the end, it was passed with a 57-27 vote, which is a 2/3 vote. The Platt Amendment allowed the United States to intervene in Cuban affairs and could also buy and lease land for naval bases. U.S. troops started to reoccupy Cuba again, but in 1934, the United States repealed the amendment. One U.S. naval base remains on permanent lease on Cuba's southeastern.
From all of us here at Big Wig News, myself, Alex Acuna, Kevin Youth, and Brandon Smith, thank you and good night.